Feed the neighborhood with a tailgate-ready Big Bow Box. It's bow time.
Welcome back to another episode of Extra Points. This is Colby, Reece, and joining me as always are the sports editors of The Breeze, Jackson Hephner and Kaiden Bridges. And JMU loses their first game of the season, a very dramatic ending. JMU coming back in the fourth quarter to force overtime, but ultimately falling to the Mountaineers here at home. What were y'all's thoughts?
Really shocking loss. I think, all three of us kind of expected at some point in the season for JMU to lose. I think going undefeated was a bit of an unrealistic expectation. It became very realistic after, JMU knocked off what we assumed would be their hardest opponents. But going into this game, App State they were kind of flying under the radar. They were playing for a potential spot in the Sun Belt Championship tonight, coming off 3 in a row. And, the Dukes, they were able to put it together in the fourth quarter, and they hung close. I mean, they really fought. And, literally, we call it a game of inches, that close. That was the difference between a win and a loss for JMU tonight.
Kind of rebounding off what Jackson said, App State came in fired up. They have a chip on their shoulder from last season. Undefeated JMU in Harrisonburg with College game day here. They were hungry. They were ready to play. And it just looked like JMU had an off game. It wasn't clicking. And once they started to get momentum in the fourth quarter, it did come down to overtime and what just felt like wasn't enough. And App State was just kind of able to pull away with the win. So as Signetti said, it was a tough loss. And, no one died, and they're just going to rebound from this. It's not the end of the world. They're just going to rebound off of this and prepare for Coastal Carolina next week.
And looking at the offense, coming off 2 really, really good performances, Jordan McLeod playing at a high level, and then you look at today's performance, they had 3 points going into the fourth quarter and had 2 points from the safety. But what kind of happened to the offense that we have seen just kind of be so explosive recently and wasn't today?
Yeah, it was really strange. Jordan McLeod, he was pretty candid in the post-game presser. He just wasn't hitting his targets. He was overthrowing them. App State was playing really tough coverage. There were very few wide open looks for the Dukes to capitalize on. And, Elijah Surratt came down with some amazing catches. I can't talk enough about that man's ability to just haul passes in. Despite, he's basically like Randy Moss out there for JMU. But yeah, it wasn't clicking tonight. And a lot of the offensive woes that we've seen early in the season all just kind of came together in this sort of perfect blend. And, they really, when they turned it on in the fourth quarter, they really turned it on like we've seen them do in the past, but it just wasn't enough.
We've talked about how Jordan McLeod thinks the offense has been clicking and gelling. And once again, tonight just seemed like an off night. App State came in playing a really clean, tight defense, didn't give up that many penalties, really just locked in on the Dukes and took advantage of, what might have been an off game for Jordan McLeod and the rest of the offense. But it seemed like we were seeing a pretty on-par offense in the fourth quarter, like what we're normally used to seeing from the Dukes. And it's going back to the idea of Signetti saying he just hasn't seen his team play a full, complete game. And I think that showed tonight. It continues to show, and I think that's just something they need to continue to clean up and work for next week.
And defensive side of things, not necessarily a bad performance, but App State definitely, made some plays when needed. Obviously didn't get the stop on third down in overtime. But when you look at this defense, what were y'all's kind of thoughts on how they performed tonight?
I think the injuries are started to come back to bite them a little bit. You kind of noticed it, especially where I noticed the most with the defensive line. Not having Jalen Green there, you could sense an impact. It didn't feel like the quarterback was pressured nearly as much as previous quarterbacks have. And, and then on top of that, the secondary, they've had problems all year. They've had plenty of guys, swap in, swap out because of various injuries. And tonight, just, some of the holes, App State was able to exploit. And so, yeah, it's part of it does kind of feel like a little bit of a long time coming. JMU has escaped a lot of really close games, especially early in the season. And I think tonight, App State somehow was just able to just do just enough to, finally be able to knock off the Dukes.
Jackson talked about the issues with the secondary and just with the offensive or defensive line with injuries. But once again, we saw the Dukes kind of come up in the fourth quarter with a play that they needed. Down the field, D'Angelo Ponce with an interception. It just feels so on par for what the JMU defense has been this season, coming up late with the big plays that the Dukes need just to secure overtime and really just continue to build that momentum and the energy. So while there are the downfalls and the injuries that are kind of lingering with the defense, they're continuing to do what they do best in making those big, important plays when it's needed.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, JMU kind of playing games like we usually see, one possession games, defense coming up late, but they obviously fall short tonight here. But still a special day in Harrisonburg. JMU hosted game day and still a good turnout from the crowd tonight. But JMU does lose 26-23 in overtime, and they will play at Coastal Carolina for the season finale next weekend in South Carolina. So it should be a fun one there, and we'll have all the live coverage for you then. So we will see you so soon.